What is a variable? Variables are things that can vary, no surprise there. They can store values and they also have names. You can use the name of a variable to reuse it or to change its value. That's why it's varying. It can have its value changed. So let's create a simple program. Let's say that we want to create a program that calculates the circumference of a circle. If we want to calculate the circumference of a circle, we have to use the equation for this, which is 2 times pi times the radius, and we can just directly type in the equation. So let's type it. It's 3.14, this is the pi, times, so the multiplication sign in MATLAB is this star. We will talk very shortly about all of the different arithmetic operations that we can perform, but for now we have no choice but to introduce it, times 2 and times the radius, which is 5 centimeters. If we run the code as it currently is, if we press run, we will get our answer, which is 31.4. By the way, as you can see, all of our previous outputs on the command window were cleared thanks to our 3 functions up here. So 31.4, no surprise there, exactly as we expected. But what if we now want to calculate the circumference of a circle with a different radius? We have to rewrite the whole equation or simply change the value of the radius within the equation, the 5. So if we want to calculate it for a radius of 8 now, we can just change this to 8 and we get the new value. No problem there. This is not a strong argument to introduce variables. But what is a strong argument to introduce variables is if we now want to calculate the area along with the circumference of that circle. Now we have to use a second equation which will have to work with the same radius. So now if you calculate the area and the circumference of a circle with a different radius, you have to change the radius in both places. So let's do it. The equation for the area of a circle was pi times the radius squared. So 3.14 times the radius times the radius. Since we don't know how to take a number to some power yet, we are just going to multiply the number 2 times. So if we run it, it works, we get our circumference, but if we want to change it for different radius, now we have to change it in 3 different places. So what we can do is, it's much easier to just extract that value, that varying element of the equation, into a variable, and that will be our radius variable. Like I said in the beginning, a variable has a name and a value. The name of the radius variable will be radius and it will be equal to 8. To assign a value to a variable, we have to use the equal sign, which in this case is an operator to assign a value to a variable, and we gave it the value of our current radius. So if we run our code, it will not work yet. It will not work the way we want it to work, but I just want to show you something. I am now going to use my command window to check the value of my radius by simply typing the name of the variable. So radius 8. We can also see the radius down here in our workspace. It has a value of 8. This is how you can use the command window to quickly check something. This also illustrates that whenever you call this variable, its underlying value is what is actually going to be called. So this means that now we can substitute the variable in our equations, run our code, and these equations will calculate the area and the circumference with the value stored in our radius. So simply change the 8 with radius, the same thing down here in the other equation, radius, and if we run it again, we get the same values, but now if we want to calculate the area and the circumference for a different radius, we simply have to change the value just once in the variable. So if we change it to 2, we will get new values. If we change it to 50, we will get even bigger values. Now currently we only have our radius as a variable, but we can also save the output of our equations into variables simply by giving them some names. So here we can say circumference equals to this equation and area equals to this equation. If we run it, our code is still going to work, but notice that we are no longer getting the nth default variable here, we are getting the specific names of our variables, and if we also call these new variables, so if I call the area, I'm going to get the value for that area, which means that the calculations that we performed, we can reuse the values over and over again after that. One last thing about the variable names, I want to stress on this. The name of the variable needs to be very descriptive of this variable. Since we're currently working with a radius, that's why I named this variable radius. But I can change the name of this variable to pancakes and it's still going to work. Pancakes. And this is a nice little shortcut that we have here. If I press Shift Enter, all of the old variables will also get renamed. So Shift Enter. As you can see, everything got changed with pancakes, almost like this, pancakes. If I run the code, it's still going to work. So generally, it really doesn't matter what names you give to your variables, but it's also always a good practice, a good quality code practice to use descriptive names. That way, when you go back to your code and you look at it, you know what is what.